Hello all, Old Geek again, and it's time for an old school module review. As my current group have just completed U3, the final enemy, the finale of the three-part series of modules centering around this coastal town of Saltmarsh, I can now review it with it fresh in my memory. U3, the final enemy, was written by TSR's UK team and was published in 1983. The cover states that it is intended for a party of characters of levels 3 through to 5. And on first glance and initial reading of the module, that felt like a desperately low estimate. But having taken a party through the entire series from start to finish, I can now conclude that that is absolutely spot on. Before I get into the meat of the module, let's take a look at the presentation. As with the other modules in the series, the cover art is by Dave DeLuve, however you pronounce his name. And while the images are exciting, they aren't as memorable as those adorning the first two modules. I always found that the front cover image was a little garish. This is a beefier adventure than the first two modules in the series, though, at least physically, with the booklet containing 48 pages and the outer folder detailing the three large level maps that comprise the main focal point of the module. Maps are nice and clear, as is the text, but the layout does give the impression of there being significant chunks of wasted space. There's quite a lot of white on the page. Yes, it is easy to read, but with a module of this size and complexity, I would have liked to have seen enemy stats in the relevant room texts, rather than being confined to a couple of pages at the back. And there's a lot of white space, so I think there was room to put this extra detail in that text. There is a fair bit of descriptive text regarding the rooms and the occupants and what's going on, but it's all well written and easy to digest, and none of it feels like superfluous padding. Inner artwork is by Keith Parkinson, and mostly of a very good standard, though a partially coloured piece used on the cardboard outer cover is ugly and unnecessary, especially as the superior black and white version is in the main booklet. There's no padding in the text, but this piece of art was clearly used to fill a little bit of excess space. So, the plot. Spoiler warning, there are spoilers in the rest of this review. Go to the last 30 seconds if you want to get my rating. Anyway, the events of modules U1 and U2 will have revealed that a large group of Sahuagin have taken over the lair of a group of lizard men, and that the lizard men have been arming themselves and trying to arrange an alliance comprising various sea races in an effort to deal with the sea devils, who pose a serious threat to their existence and to the peace of the area. The adventurers inadvertently inserted themselves into the plot in U1 and should have secured an alliance with the lizard men in U2. While the various sea peoples get their forces organised, the council need a group to carry out a reconnaissance mission to get information regarding the Sahuagin, their numbers, their hierarchy, and the general layout of the lair. Assuming the party are friendly with the lizard men, they will have some assistance in the form of some rough maps and potentially 14 of the lizard men tribe to help fight. There's also a group of 6 members of the town guard who can help too. And should the party wish to travel to the lair by ship, there's a crew of sailors who will remain on the boat, but they can take part in any sea combat if that happens. So, all those extra bodies, that's how a party of level 3 to 5 PCs have a chance in this module. On arriving at the old lizardmen lair, it will be noted, probably by the lizardmen themselves, that it has sunk. It was previously dry, but now the lower 2 levels are underwater, and this is another challenge that the party must deal with. Thankfully for them, there are a number of magic items they can find that will help them in their endeavours. Throughout the series, the modules have required thoughtful play and have rewarded groups that do not charge into encounters all gung-ho. And that was all in preparation for this adventure. The quest, as explained to them by the town council, explicitly states what they need to do. And more than any other low to mid-level module, this one is total suicide for a party who turn to violence as their first answer to everything. In total, there are more than 300 creatures in the Sahuagin lair, including spellcasters, multiple spellcasters, high-ranking officers, massive sharks, and many, many, many Sahuagin warriors. But all along the way, the module asks the party questions and tests their restraint. The Sahuagin are a cruel and vile race, and the adventurers may discover their larder, hear tales from their slaves that they are being worked to death and then eaten, and even witness a ritual in which priestesses are feeding live Sahuagin children to sharks. This crude sadism is only amplified by their obvious intelligence, their strict hierarchy, and the meticulous nature of the renovations they are making to the lair. The natural caves of the lizardmen are being reworked and retiled. Vast parts of the map are now symmetrical. This is the epitome of lawful evil, the alignment of devils. The players are left in no doubt that this is one hell of an evil race, and the fear and hatred that the other aquatic races have for them is more than justified. As a finale to the 3-module series, the final enemy works absolutely beautifully. It dots all the I's and it crosses the T's, and even though the final assault by the Aquatic Alliance is meant to occur off camera, the significance of the party's reconnaissance mission is far from insignificant, and thus it should be satisfying for the players. Though I would not suggest, playing it independently of the other 2 modules in the series, but as a DM resource, it does contain an enlightening insight into the structure of the society of a race whose existence is based on organised and extreme evil. I found it a very enjoyable adventure simply to read through. But, and here come the issues with the module. It is very possible that the party will consist of 6 to 8 PCs, an NPC who they rescued in the earlier modules, 6 town guardsmen, and 14 lizardmen. Start thinking of the logistics involved. Now, I ran it Theatre of the Mind. I had events simulated off-screen while I rolled handfuls of dice at a time, hand-waved away some of the crunch that can slow down far smaller combats, and it was still a challenge to deal with the mechanics. Now bring it to the mix, digesting a massive lair with roughly 300 inhabitants, and trying to portray their actions and reactions logically and intelligently. I will say now that this is one of the toughest modules I have ever run. Now imagine that one step further. Played on a board, a grid, with miniatures. How slow will that game go? And then there's the nature of the mission and the amount that is in the adventure. And this is a problem that manifested itself in U2 Danger at Dunwater. You have this wonderfully detailed lair, florid descriptions, a plethora of enemies, but most of the good stuff is on the lower 2 levels, and the majority of the party will only have a potion of water breathing to help them, which lasts about an hour. And most of that hour will be spent creeping around, avoiding conflict. About half the lair will never be used. Wasted. My group never met the high-ranking Sahuagin and did not stumble upon the grisly ritual. In all, the adventure took about three online sessions to complete, totaling about 10-11 hours. Now, for a 48-page adventure, that's not a particularly long time. We had a good 5 sessions out of the seemingly much shorter Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh, because in U1, all the material in that adventure gets used. But U2 and U3 both have this issue where quite a lot of the material just gets wasted. But while we're on to my group, how did they get on? Well, all hell broke loose in level 2 of the lair, and they ended up retreating. But they fought very cleverly, making the most of choke points along the way, and inflicted huge casualties on the Sahuagin. Half of their retinue of loyal town guardsmen and friendly lizard men perished. Most of the party members got badly damaged, but ultimately the Good Alliance won, and everybody had fun. Anyway, back to the issues. Due to the difficulty and the specialist nature of the module's environment, the helpful magic items it provides have the potential to be a little bit overpowering, possibly even game-breaking, if the party are to move on from this series to other level-appropriate content. The items are perfect for this adventure, though, and if the characters are simply being used for this series, then they are fine. And of course, a DM can always add a random rust monster or two to any later adventure whenever they wish, if required. When giving U3, the final enemy, a rating, I have to do so in the context of the series as a whole. While the latter 2 modules in the series do have their ups and downs, their quirks and their flaws, the series when taken together is right up there with the best that TSR ever did. It went against the traditional fantastical grain with its grittiness and high degree of verisimilitude, and it pushed the exploration and the roleplay pillars of D&D firmly to the fore. The challenge levels ramped up gradually and appropriately. So what I'm going to have to do is give out 3 ratings now. U3, the final enemy, as an individual module, 6 out of 10. But it's not meant to be played as an individual module. U3, the final enemy, as the finale to this series, 8 out of 10. The U series, taken as a whole, 9 out of 10. It's absolutely fabulous. It's one of the classic series. It's often mentioned amongst the all-time great series of AD&D modules, and deservedly so. I love it. Loads of other people do too. Well, that's been me, the old geek, for a first module review in a little while. But it's good to be doing one again. I hope you've enjoyed it. Click like, click subscribe, come and see us on our regular live stream, and for now, see ya!